Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions on the movie, TV show, whatever we're watching. This show is made possible entirely by the support of our patrons over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. So if you like the show and you can support us over there, we would definitely appreciate it. But if you can't, no big deal. The fact that you're listening is awesome. And of course, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast with your friends. Joining me this week, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What is going on? We talked a little bit about kind of just the chaos of the week before we started recording, and I won't really weigh too heavily into that, but just if you are like us, stressed this week, given everything we saw in particular on Wednesday at the Capitol here in the U.S., that's a perfectly normal feeling. You should be stressed by domestic terrorism storming the Capitol building. That sucks, and we might do like another episode of one of our podcasts on it at some point, but I didn't want to not mention it here in this episode. But
yeah, we're delaying it a full day
Yeah.
recording it because neither of us were anywhere close to being okay talking about basically anything else, I guess.
Yeah, I was very much glued to my Twitter feed and everything yesterday. Like when things started happening, the only time I really stepped away was I had a meeting for work at like 3 p.m. our time. So I basically had to duck away to a Zoom call for about 45 minutes, and then I immediately was back on Twitter and being like, did I miss anything? Like, what is the latest nonsense that I've missed, and chaos and stuff like that. So yeah, we originally planned on sitting down and recording this Wednesday night. Everything was going to shit, so we both kind of agreed like, hey, yeah, let's just not tonight. But we're here recording it Thursday. You're hearing it, if you're hearing it the day it goes live, Friday as usual. So fortunately we had a little bit of a breathing room to do that. But at the same time, like if things had further escalated today, I would have been like, I have no problem either postponing the episode, or I can sit down and do like a quick solo one, like I did last week with Newsies. But we're feeling up for it. So we're going to talk today about Soul. This was, of course, the Christmas Day release here from Disney and Pixar on Disney Plus. My original intent would have been to sit down and talk about it last week, but we couldn't make the schedule work out, and I couldn't really get anybody else on. So we kind of bumped it to this week. So Cam and I will be sitting here talking about Soul. Admittedly, two white guys, so take everything we're going to discuss in terms of like the bigger themes of the movie with a grain of salt on that front. I was in jazz band in like middle school and elementary school, middle school, and maybe a little bit of high school. I don't remember at this point. So like there are definitely moments of the movie that like resonated a little bit more with me, but obviously like neither of us have lived the Black experience.
That is very much like a part of this.
Yeah, that is very much kind of a key focal point of the movie. But still, I still wanted to sit down and chat about Soul. So
I mean,
yeah.
I'll just say I'm a big fan of jazz. While I was like, I've not been how do I put this? I have not necessarily been like the most musically talented person, especially when it comes to what I think is like you need to have a high level of skill to do jazz to make it work and make it very and make it good, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea, the kind of humorous part of it of jazz is like, anything can be jazz, but not everything that's jazz is good. And I mean that by like, just because you throw something together and you're like, that's jazz, doesn't mean like it's a high quality. But
that's 22's basically a whole thing is like, I'm really
jazz.
good at jazz.
Jazz. I'm good at jazzing.
Yeah.
Like I can do jazzing, but to do jazz, like I'm a fan of like the a lot of the classics, Miles Davis, Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald. Uh, there's a lot of incredible jazz players. I am a big fan of NPR after 7 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's just all jazz
Mm-hmm.
and it's so good. And
Uh,
like jazz is something that I've always really loved and appreciated. I grew up in a home where like jazz was like not the atypical or the not the typical music that we listened to.
yeah.
And so finding jazz as like a in my preteens was kind of like I was like 10 or 11 years old when I first heard my first jazz concert. And after that I started listening to a lot of big band and a lot of stuff, which of course led into like my love of rock and roll and ska music. But like my love of ska music really has its foundation in jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And the greats are the greats, and like I could list them off here, but the reality is that this is not a film about the greats. It's a film about the could be greats.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed. So while neither of us will be able to speak about the like legitimacy of the black experience displayed in Soul, from a music standpoint and from like an aspirational standpoint, considering the fact that we're two amateur podcasters, we certainly feel that on that level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Certainly. Like there are definitely moments of Soul that I think are universal because it's if you take out the jazz component and you have that same character doing anything creative, like like there are elements of that are a universal story. The conflict that he has with his mother, as he kind of wants to pursue this goal, are like arguments I've had with my own mother and stuff over the years. So like there's still a lot that resonates, even if it's not completely focused in on the jazz experience or the black experience. Like I still, very much could see myself in this kind of character's shoes, for a lot of parts of the movie. Um, you mentioned NPR after 7, and our local NPR affiliate is the radio station's call signal is KJZZ, here in
Hmm.
Phoenix, KJazz. And I remember listening to KJazz and KYOT, the Coyote, a ton when I was growing up, which were basically
Yeah.
our big jazz stations. Like switching off of the Edge 103.9 or something like that
Yeah.
when I was growing up, and just being like I want a taste of something different.
It was
Yeah,
great. Like The Edge was, your traditional alternative rock station through the 90s and 2000s
yeah, which
and
had
into the
its
early aughts.
very it had its dedicated ska like nightly shows and stuff.
Ska punk,
Yeah.
hosted by Craven Moorhead, which is for years had eluded me that it was a pseudonym,
Yeah.
and a double entendre for years eluded me.
Hmm.
Uh, and I mean that. Like, I'm 31 years old now. I was 30 years old when I found out that Craven Moorhead was not a real person.
Was not his real name. Was it when
It was
Snowbike
not.
Mike made like
Yeah,
he made that his name for one of the streams or something he had done with Kind of Funny, I want to say.
yeah. The Love, Sex, and Stuff stream. He called in as Craven
Yeah.
Moorhead, and I was like, oh, I'm like, why is he calling in as like I didn't know he was a fan of 103.9 The Edge, and then it hit me. I'm like, oh,
Oh,
I'm
oh,
dumb.
yeah, yeah.
But no, like jazz stations, jazz has like a really I like it's interesting. I turned on jazz music when I was in my preteens to kind of like learn more, like experience different music, but also because jazz just lets you like they talk about it here, it lets you flow.
Hmm.
Like, you can flow into jazz just listening to it. Close your eyes. And what's fun is to like one of my favorite things to do was like to try to like figure out the colors of the songs. Like close your eyes and just think of like the noises that you're hearing as color
Hmm.
and trying to piece that together.
Yeah.
And it was always like I love jazz.
Hmm.
I think jazz is just one of the most like it is one of the I don't want to be like pretentious here and just be like it's one of the purest forms of musical art, but it kind of is. And the wonderful thing about it is that it's spontaneous in a lot of aspects. It plays by its own rules. It's very much it's a such a chill, cool music for such a rebellious style.
It can be like there,
It
like
can be, yeah.
that's so there. One of the little bits of trivia that I didn't include in here, but Curly, the drummer's shirt, is basically like jazz and or like it's something and fusion and blah 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 and blah blah, and it's basically just all it's the Ghostbusters, all the Ghostbuster names or whatever. Like obviously in the Kind of Funny community, we have the what Greg and Tim and Nick and
Yeah.
Steimer and Colin or whatever. That iteration of that shirt. But it's all different forms of jazz. And yes, there is definitely some jazz that's like cool and mellow and stuff, but like I remember hearing like jazz fusion for the first time being like, oh, this does not gel with me at all, because there was like such a level of chaos to it that
Yeah,
yes,
no, I can't stand fusion either.
yeah, there's definitely like an art behind it, and I can see and I can appreciate it, but it does not play well to my ears and stuff like that. So yeah, there's
Jazz
definitely,
fusion's a special beast.
yeah.
That I hear noise, other people hear music. Respect to that.
Hmm.
But what I love about it is like just improvisational jazz. Like the moment where they're like they'll say, "Hey, we're gonna go off book for this one,"
Hmm.
and somebody will just like start it off, and then they'll just like it's just a collaborational effort between the different musicians to to stand out from each other, but still create a harmonious sound.
Yeah.
And it's just like there's something so special about jazz as just a music.
I
Um,
remember growing up as a percussionist, as one of the percussionists that actually like played other percussion instruments instead of just like the snare drum or whatever. And doing like I remember our teacher, our band teacher. Who my actually it's funny because obviously Joe Gardner here, Mr. goes by Mr. G. My introduction to band teacher in elementary school, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade was like Mr. Giorlando or something. Like it wasn't that because I knew other Giorlandos, but it was something like that, and he just went by Mr. G. And so like immediately this took me back to like my childhood and stuff. But I remember, I want to say it was Mr. Falzerano, my high school band teacher, who like introduced the idea of like if you only play the black keys on a keyboard, you can basically create jazz. Like you can freeform and just like play jazz there, because you're never gonna have like chord dissonance of like the notes being too close together that it just like causes that weird sound, because of there's enough space between any of the black keys that if you just stick to those, like you can always kind of play something that will sound, like whether you do it as chords, or if you just kind of do it as single keys. It's basically like the super basic, most bare bones of jazz, but that's definitely something I remember kind of like playing around with growing up as a percussionist, both on xylophone and then on like the piano at my parents' house. Growing up, I would just kind of like sit down and fiddle with that every now and then, because I was definitely never like I could read music, but I didn't have the patience to do like to just be a pianist. But like I would fiddle with it and play with that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, let's talk about some soul here. So a little bit of a history lesson here. Obviously, as I mentioned, released originally here on December 25th, 2020. Other notable releases of the time, of course, you also had Wonder Woman 1984 on December 25th, releasing on HBO Max. But earlier in December, you also had movies like The Prom, which came to Netflix on December 11th. And then you also had Monster Hunter, which came to theaters December 18th. I think it came to Amazon
oh shoot,
Prime.
that's right. It came out,
Yeah,
huh?
I think it's on Amazon Prime now. But like it also had a limited run in theaters, yeah, with Mila Jovovich, and I was like, oh, yep. I don't think I've ever seen a trailer for that movie. I just kind of like occasionally remember that it's happening.
I
Um,
saw the trailer for it and it looked pretty cool, but then I heard there's like a racist joke in it,
oh,
so I didn't bother watching it.
lame. Just realizing I did not pull in the runtime here, so let me grab that real quick. It is a runtime of 1 hour and 40 minutes. Oh, did you watch? I forgot to include this in here. The animated short that would have been like the companion piece to it in theaters, Burrow.
No, I did not.
Okay, that's definitely something to check out. I'll throw that in kind of the recommended view. It's it's interesting because it's a very much 2D animated kind of thing. It's basically about a little bunny. I think it was a little bunny who is like he's got kind of like a little architectural drawing for like his dream house that he's gonna dig into the ground, kind of start setting up. But then as he goes to burrow into other what he wants to be the other rooms, he kind of keeps stumbling into other burrows of other like underground dwelling animals, um, and he kind of keeps getting like very paranoid and very like he's like the story that I got from it is basically like he is clearly an introvert, and anytime he's like encountering any of these other people, he just digs deeper because he's trying to get away from them, but he keeps coming upon other and other people. Ultimately, well, I won't like spoil it or whatever, but it's a cute little story that I think you can kind of check out and enjoy as well, and that is Burrow as kind of the little animated short. Um, I always try and like make a point especially when we do these kinds of Pixar shows on that D plus. I try and like remember or highlight like this is the animated short that went along with this. Like it was weird when the animated short before Onward was a Simpsons short, just because it's like, oh god, it's weird to think about like the Simpsons playing before a Disney thing. But that's the world we live in now. In the Pixar timeline of things, this, of course, comes between Onward, which came out right before the pandemic really started hitting, or like at the beginning of it, in March 6th here in the States. And then up next in the slate is Luca, which is tentatively scheduled for June 18th, 2021. But obviously, we will see how that all plays out in the months to come. A little bit of the roll call here, the who's who. So for the director here, you have Pixar kind of staple Pete Docter, is the primary director, I guess, who has of course done Monsters Inc., Up, and Inside Out with Pixar. And then you have in his directorial debut as a co-director here, you have Kemp Powers. So yeah, he didn't really have he is a little bit of a writer that's been working on a few other things. And so on the writer side of things, the writers of this are Pete Docter, Mike Jones, and Kemp Powers. Pete Docter, in addition to the films that he directed there, Monsters Inc., Up, and Inside Out, he also was a credited writer on the Toy Story 1 and 2 in particular, as well as WALL-E, and then, of course, Soul here. Mike Jones, prior to this, like he hadn't really done too much. There's a movie out there called Even Hand that he did back in 2002. But other than that, it's basically Soul. And then he's also the credited writer of the upcoming Luca that I just mentioned. And then Kemp Powers there is he was a writer on 5 episodes of Star Trek Discovery. And I don't think I pulled it in here, but there's basically some trivia in there of like he was brought in specifically to kind of create and flesh out the character of Joe Gardner, and kind of Kemp Powers is a black man, black writer, and so he's kind of like helping add an authenticity to that experience, because the film was not originally centered around a jazz musician, and that was something that kind of came not necessarily later in the process of making the film, but it came after the initial concepts and ideas. And so once they decided we're going to make this about jazz, they brought Kemp Powers in to originally as like a contract writer to kind of help punch up the script for the character, I guess, but he eventually stuck around long enough to be elevated to co-director for the film. Starring, you have as Joe, you have Jamie Foxx, who I occasionally forget about this, but like I remember him getting his start back in Living Color back in the day, way back in the day with all the Wayans family members. And then I completely forgot that he had his own TV show for years, the Jamie Foxx Show.
Yep, that was a fun show too.
Yeah, he of course kind of broke out into like critical success and fame when he played Ray Charles in Ray, as well. He has also been in Django Unchained, and he was in, of course, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 as Electro, right? Yeah. He was in Baby Driver, which is one of my favorite movies that year, which admittedly is problematic in hindsight with the Kevin Spacey connection. He was also in one of my least favorite movies of recent years, Robin Hood, which like I really wanted to like because I really like Taron Egerton. But yeah, it was not a good movie. And then he is, expected to return for the Untitled Spider-Man 3 film coming up here in the coming years. Reprising his role or a role as Electro, suggesting the whole Spider-Verse theory in live action. As 22, the kind of almost titular character of the Soul, Tina Fey, of course, made her kind of name on SNL. First as a writer, then as kind of a weekend update anchor, and head writer for the show. She also wrote and was in Mean Girls. She was in Megamind, so this is kind of her return to animation after Megamind. And then, of course, 30 Rock and Muppets Most Wanted. And I only pulled Muppets Most Wanted in there because we recently talked about Muppet Christmas Carol.
It was not a good movie.
Muppets Most Wanted? No, I've not heard.
Yeah.
I've not heard good things about it. Still not watched it myself, but yeah, that was what I got from the trailers. If Tina Fey's out there doing a Russian accent or something, I was like, it's probably not going to be good. Graham Norton is in here as Moonwind. Of course, probably best known for the Graham Norton Show, a long-running British talk show that I always see kind of make the rounds on like Twitter and YouTube and stuff like that, clips of the show. I don't think I've ever
He's
actually
a fantastic
watched.
host.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, absolutely.
His show's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I don't watch it very often just because like it's British focused, so there's a lot of like British,
Yeah.
relatively important, like notable British people on the show, but that means nothing to me unless they're like famous actors, and
Yeah.
even then, But he's a phenomenal interview. He really gets people to lower their guard down, and he has just such a really fun and relaxed show.
Yeah, I saw.
And he's super nice. So
Yeah, I saw spoilers for Wonder Woman 1984, I guess, but I saw in the trivia for that movie, just because I even if it's not on Disney Plus, I still like go into the IMDb trivia on movies a lot of times. And when he was interviewing Gal Gadot on Wonder Woman, he let slip, or he asked about the invisible jet, and basically she tried to play it off, I guess, at first that like it. You will see. We'll see what happens, and then kind of later on in the interview, kind of like it took him to task a little bit that like, hey, that's like a thing that we didn't want spoiled in the movie. Like we wanted that to be a surprise for people.
yeah,
So yeah, he plays by his own set of rules. But yeah, he's a lot of fun. I think he's a lot of fun here as Moonwind in this. Rachel House plays Terry. Probably best known as Topaz, aka Jeff Goldblum's assistant in Thor Ragnarok. And of course she is kind of as a result a staple of some of Taika Waititi's stuff, having done like Hunt for the Wilder People. I think that was Taika Waititi, right? Or am I thinking of?
it is. Yes.
Yeah. And then I did not realize this, but she also plays the grandmother, Grandma Tala, in Moana. She was the voice of the grandmother in that movie. So not her first Disney role here. Alice Braga is Counselor Jerry, one of the Counselor Jerrys, because obviously there are many. She was in I Am Legend, Predators, Elysium. She was in The New Mutants last year, and she is going to be in the upcoming The Suicide Squad, the sequel there. Richard Ayoade, I think that's right, playing one of the other Counselor Jerrys. Of course, we've talked about him, I think, a little bit before on the Mandalorian episode we did, but he was in the IT Crowd. He's also in the Lego Movie 2, the second part, and as I mentioned there, the Mandalorian. He plays the assassin robot droid that was in kind of the jailbreak episode in season 1. Felicia Rashad here playing Libba, the mother of Joe. Of course, best known for her time on The Cosby Show as Claire Huxtable. But then she has, in recent years, been playing Creed's mom in Creed 2, and then she was also she will be in the eventual Creed 3. And I also watched her recently in Jingle Jangle: A Christmas Journey. On Netflix, one of the Christmas movies that Netflix put out this year. Donnell Rawlings as Dez, who will always be that guy from the Chappelle Show to me. But also, I had forgotten this. He is he's credited as Pizza Heist Witness in Spider-Man 2 with Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
From back in that, but yeah, he was one of the kind of staple standout characters of Chappelle's Show. Questlove, as I mentioned earlier, is playing Curly. Actually, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I mentioned the character Curly. Of course, Questlove, known from The Roots and is a regular staple these days on the Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. And then he was also one of my favorite like one-off characters in Parks and Rec as Lavandrius, aka Donna's brother.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
When he shows up to her wedding and throws the microwave.
Yeah. It's just
So good.
just a fun little
So
bit.
good.
I like he's also like just to throw this out there. I follow Janina Gavankar on Instagram, and they are like best buds. And so back when people could go to things, I would always see him pop up in her Instagram like stories for like red carpets and stuff like that. And then
he's also a really brilliant speaker when it comes to social justice issues.
certainly, yeah. And then lastly, here we have Angela Bassett playing Dorothea, who probably had her early breakout roles in movies like Boys in the Hood, Malcolm X, How Stella Got Her Groove Back, and then more recently has been she was in Black Panther. She's basically like the head of the, not ISS, but she's the head of like one of the agencies in Mission Impossible Fallout, and she will be returning in Mission Impossible 7 and presumably, of course, in Black Panther 2. And that's that's going to be a tough movie to watch with the loss of Chadwick Boseman last year, but be interesting to see how they handle that and how Angela Bassett in particular, like I'm dreading being devastated by however she responds to T'Challa's passing or whatever happens in the movie. Diving into the trivia here. This is one of the first cases. I think maybe I've done it in like one or two other episodes, but like this first little bit, I take pride on because I just pulled it out of my own butt. It's not something I pulled from IMDb. I didn't admittedly put it into IMDb or anything like that, but something that just stood out for me is how this movie features kind of both major late night show band leaders in Questlove, obviously as I mentioned from The Roots, and The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, and John Baptiste of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert composed the jazz music for the film and was the model for Joe's hands playing the piano. They basically like watched John Baptiste playing all this stuff and basically animated to his finger movements. And I just think that's really cool that like the all my life basically like it's been a war between those two shows in their various incarnations. And so the idea that like members of both obviously like in recent years as like Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Fallon, and all of them are like friends in that space. Like they have no problem going on everybody else's shows and all that stuff. But like as somebody who grew up in the Jay Leno, David Letterman, combative era of those shows, seeing like both of those shows, in a sense contribute to this movie, I thought was really cool. Some of the name tags of previous mentors of 22 that appear on the wall are Michael Jackson, Prince, Martin Luther King Jr., Steve Jobs, Aretha Franklin, and the late Pixar director Joe Ranft, who is also the caterpillar from Bug's Life, right? That was him, I think.
Yep.
Anyway, the Production Babies part of the credits has been retitled Recent U Seminar Graduates as kind of a little fun nod to obviously the ideas behind the film. And then before the end logos roll, it says, in addition to the usual created by Pixar text, there is created by Pixar and in homes at least 6 feet away from each other in the Bay Area, referencing obviously that there was a lot of work done here in the COVID-19 pandemic. This is something I haven't gone back to check myself, but I trust that it's accurate. But every Pixar movie kind of has like a little Easter egg tease for the next movie, and apparently the tease that was in Onward here for this movie is that a Dorothea Williams record is in Onward during the scene where Colt Bronco visits the Lightfoot house at the beginning of the film. Similar in the spirit of kind of staples of Pixar Easter eggs, the Hall of Everything contains both the Pizza Planet truck and a tiny street sign that says A113, a nod to kind of a iconic classroom that so many Pixar people went through and have kind of a history with that appears in every movie. One of the ads on the subway is for Brang, the startup company Riley's dad moved to San Francisco for in Inside Out. In order to accurately portray African American culture within the film, filmmakers hired several consultants with whom they worked closely through the film's development. Among them were several Pixar employees, musicians Herbie Hancock, Terry Lynn Carrington, Quincy Jones, and John Baptiste, educator Janetta Cole, and stars Questlove and David Diggs. I didn't pull David Diggs in as one of the starrings. He has one of the he's got a little small role in there, but obviously David Diggs, of Hamilton fame, as well as Blind Spotting. Kemp Powers, here it is, originally joined as co-writer in early in development to help write the character of Joe, and was initially given a 12-week contract, which was then extended. He was subsequently promoted to co-director after his extensive contributions to the film, making him Pixar's first African-American co-director. In Dr. Borgenson's Hall of You, a statue is shown to have been erected for the famed psychologist, where he stands pointing out with his right arm while his left holds the hands of a child. The pose is evocative of the Partners statue found at Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom in front of the castle, where Walt Disney points down Main Street with his right hand, while his left hand holds his most famous character, Mickey Mouse. And then lastly here, according to co-writer Kemp Powers, the last line of the movie was originally written as, "I'm not sure, but I know I'm going to enjoy every minute of it," but was changed to, "I'm not sure, but I know I'm going to live every minute of it," because an animator pointed out to him that life also has painful moments that we still have to live through. Powers found the final line more profound. And also, there's another one that I'll throw in there because it's also one of my favorite little moments in the show. Kemp Powers is a lifelong Knicks fan and is also responsible for the egregious joke at the Knicks' expense in this film, where 22 basically talks about how she's been messing with the team for decades, or they, I guess, it's Tina Fey playing it, but I would say Soul is a they kind of character. So I love that, like, he came out there on Twitter and was like defending the inclusion of that joke in the film as a fan. He was basically like, I feel like I've earned the right to make that joke. It's you supporting the Islanders and all that stuff over the years. Go to town making your jokes.
Yeah.
What did you think overall of Soul here, Cam?
I found it to be, out of all the holiday movies, I definitely think it's the best. Certainly most cohesive.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that it does a really wonderful job of really putting together a lot of different difficult ideas and concepts. I'm not surprised that the kind of like starting director of this was also the one who did Inside Out.
Right, yeah. It very much has a lot of those kinds of vibes.
Yeah, Inside Out was like such a departure from your very typical, like your very normal Pixar movie, in that it was not establishing this, adorable, wonderful universe to play in.
It wasn't. It wasn't. Like I remember when Inside Out came out. It was like I remember seeing a tweet that was like, Pixar's history. What if toys had feelings? What if bugs had feelings? What if cars had feelings? What if monsters had feelings? And then you get all the way down to this, and it's what if feelings had feelings?
Had feelings, yeah. No, I think it did a lot of really cool things that I always like to see kind of explored a bit. We oftentimes see the afterlife get explored, but there's this kind of concept of like a before.
Mm-hmm.
Is like it's a very limited, not very often explored like process or thought. It's like you can find it in a couple different like there's like it definitely has its background in a lot of different spiritual and religious contexts. And like you can find your sources out there for it. The idea of like what came before, like where were our souls before they were here, and Soul kind of explores that in a very fun, creative way that I think establishes like it's still very, 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 very much like Inside Out, in which it's exploring much more difficult concepts
Mm-hmm.
of like exploring emotion like you would think on paper is super simple, but it delves into like Inside Out. It has far more about dealing with trauma and difficulty, and has such a like a narrative about you can't let your life be defined by just the happy moments. You have to be able to feel your feelings, and it's like it also like feeling the feelings of pain and loss in regards to the joys of your past. And like it deals with a lot of really like a really lot of like adult conversation, like conversational topics. Soul, I feel, does the same thing when it's talking about passions. It's talking about dreams and goals and what you accomplish in your life. When Joe is through the Hall of Joe, he's blown away by just like how insignificant his life was.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially after he went through Borg Jorgensen or whatever the doctor's
Yeah.
like museum was, that was filled with these great achievements, and his was just not.
Yeah,
And
you
I
have like
think like yeah,
scenes of him at a diner or watching. I mean, it would like like that is one of those scenes that like I'm like, oh, this hits way too close to home. Where it's like if the Hall of You for me would be like sitting here in front of a mic recording a podcast or playing a video game or stuff like that. Like
yeah,
it's and so seeing him just like playing like there are I think great little scenes within there, but they're not given the focus because that's not what he's focused on. But like
yeah,
I
he's
love
focused
that
on
like
himself.
I love that you see him with a young Curly, on the drums
Yeah,
and stuff like that. Like I was one of the things I was kind of like waiting for the turn to be on this movie was almost like him realizing that his spark wasn't music but was teaching. Because like it definitely seems like it's setting up for that like character epiphany kind of thing.
yeah, and but at the
But we never
very end
really
they
get
they
it.
turn it.
Yeah,
Well, they turn it. They're like, there's no such thing as a spark.
yeah,
Like there's no great epiphany moment that you have in your life where, oh, this is all supposed, like the entire point of the ending. I forgot Dorothea's uh story she tells Joe. She goes, Joe, let me
hmm,
tell you something. And she talks about the fish that went up to another fish and said, I want to go to the ocean. And the fish says, you're here. He goes, no, this is water. I want to go to the ocean.
yeah,
And it's like you're looking for this great magnificent thing to appear in your life and be that defining moment that changes it forever. But that's not how life works. And when he says, I'm going to, at the very end when he says he's going to live his life, where he goes from there in that moment could be anywhere, and I like that they chose to end it there. Because it could be he realized teaching was like the thing that he needed to pursue. Or it could be that he realizes that he just needs to really take the time to enjoy his life moment by moment. There are a lot of things that you can pull from that ending that are left ambiguous, but with enough context that you can find a like a worthwhile conclusive ending. But I also felt like that hall of me, or that museum of me section was so, like you said, that hit you, and you like that same here. Like we're in our 30s,
yeah,
and we are both involved in careers that are not what our quote unquote ideal career life would be. Um, but it's where we are. It's where we're at in the moment. And who's to say what'll happen tomorrow or in the future? But I really enjoyed also those moments when he realizes the things that really made up his life,
hmm,
like the actual special things that made up his life. And it goes to that scene where he's in the cafe, the diner,
hmm,
eating the pecan pie and just like eating that piece of pecan pie when it's raining outside. Like those are like moments like that for me are what I don't know if it says a lot about me as a person who enjoys like, a solitary life, but those special moments of when it's raining out. Like I remember there's one day that I was living in my apartment with my roommates, and I remember this day so clearly. It was a Sunday and it was raining outside, but wasn't like a cold rain.
Mm-hmm.
And so like we had the door open to the patio, and the door was open, and I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I made grilled cheeses for everybody and tomato soup, and we all just like sat around the table, just not really even talking too much, but just like listening to the rain outside as we were in our cozy in our PJs. It was a Sunday morning,
Mm-hmm.
Sunday early afternoon, and just living that life. And man, it was like that day, like days like those days are the days that I think like I want in my museum.
Yeah, that's a
Those are the days I want to like. It'd be like, what were the days that like defined like these moments in your life, and those are the kind of moments I'm talking about.
yeah. It's like it's really easy to, think about the maybe like just the routine that we're in or something like that. But like as we've continued talking, I'm like, oh, but like also in my Hall of Me would be these incredible moments I had on stage when I was an actor and stuff like that, or
Yeah,
would be me when I was in drumline in high school and performing in front of like an entire stadium of people and stuff like that. Performing in Disneyland as for in like middle school band. Um, like I've had incredible moments in my life, and I just have to dig a little bit deeper to like think about them and like let them resurface and let those memories, let that stuff come back, like your grilled cheese and tomato soup kind of stuff. Yeah,
I like how you took my like warm memory, and then you're like, I forgot about all my kick ass
No, I mean, like,
accomplishments.
but I have the same kinds of things. Like when you
Yeah, no, I
the
do.
very first memory that like some of those other ones had like popped up just in the conversation, but when you mentioned grilled cheese and tomato soup, I can immediately have like I have great memories of. Either Harumi Sushi downtown here in Phoenix, just like last year, basically, because it was right around the corner from my office for the symphony. Before the pandemic started, just going there on my lunch break, rain pouring down a little bit, and just enjoying sushi and like staring out the window at downtown Phoenix and stuff. Like that was a wonderful little moment that I had. Or
Yeah, no.
Cornish pasties, a favorite place of mine here in town, or short leash hot dogs. Like I have plenty of those kinds of food based
Yeah, no, yeah,
memories as well.
yeah.
Um,
No, no. And like I've had my triumphs in my life. I
mhm,
mean, I don't talk about it very often just because I don't know why I don't talk about it very often. But I did performance.
mhm.
I was in a band in high school. I I don't think I've ever even talked to you about this, Trevor. A um I think I might have actually mentioned this to you. I was a melodrama actor.
Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, I worked for like a professional melodrama company for a while.
Hmm.
Um, I can proudly say I was a paid actor at one point.
Yeah.
So,
Isn't that a fun like
uh,
that's another moment that would be in my book is the very first paycheck I ever got from Stray Cat Theater. I It was a show called Kate Crackernuts, and I was their assistant stage manager as well as like a cameo role in the show kind of thing. And so when they wrote me the check, and it was admittedly just like a gas stipend or whatever, but I instead of the $100 they gave to all the actors, I got 200 because I got 100 for the ASM portion of the gig and the acting portion of the gig. And like I remember,
yeah,
I somewhere I have a photocopy of that check that I was like at the time I was like I'm gonna get this framed, my first paid acting gig kind of thing. um
yeah. No, I got paid in cash under the table.
as
uh,
many of those kinds of stories
yeah,
tend to be.
yeah. But like I don't know if I told you this. I was like I cross dressed in that show.
Hmm.
I played a ranch hand and his wife.
Okay.
Like, and I was on like I would have to do quick costume changes into a skirt and
Yep.
blouse over like
Yeah.
and
As you do in those kinds of things.
yeah, and I also had to during intermissions. There's a section where like we need somebody to go out and talk to the crowd while we get like the stage set up, like the backstage set up, and I'd be like, okay. And when it was my turn, most of the time I went out as a guy, but one time I went out as the wife,
Hmm.
and I had a great time.
Yep.
And I'm like, this is so much fun. Uh, who knew that like drag could be so much fun? Little signs that should
RuPaul
have
did.
like
RuPaul knew.
RuPaul knew. No, it's like I like there's a photo album I have now of like like talking about memories and
Hmm.
like the Hall of Me.
Hmm.
There's definitely like looking back, there's definitely signs that like I was not a straight kid.
Hmm.
Like like I'm going through photos and I'm like there's plenty of like photographic evidence that there's no way in hell that I was ever going to turn out straight.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like I loved that aspect of the film and about how it's like the film is literally just about living your life well. Like a life well lived is a life worth living.
Yeah. I remember when I was watching the movie on Christmas Day. I almost went into this a little bit when we were talking about kind of our personal histories with jazz and stuff. I remember I love, in particular, Whiplash and La La Land are a couple of my favorite movies from recent years. Um, and basically, I remember after La La Land tweeting out something to the effect of like, "I am like, just please keep giving Damien Chazelle money to make these love letters to jazz, and artists' relationship with jazz." Obviously, I think Whiplash is a much more like toxic relationship, but even La La Land has its toxic issues or whatever. But like at the core, those are movies about people that love jazz. And I remember, so while I was watching this. Like the first thoughts that were kind of like percolating my mind were Soul is like Whiplash plus Inside Out plus Brave, and the Brave connection in particular being like they both with this and with Brave, I thought they did a great job in kind of like teasing what the movie was going to be without giving you really like the big turn of like here's what actually most of this movie is going to be like the fact that half the movie is 22 in Joe's body, and that's how 22 is kind of figuring out life. Like you don't get any of that from the pre-release trailers for Soul, much like in Brave you didn't get anything of kind of the like you got Merida being sure about not wanting a man in her life, and so she's going to play for my own hand, and she shoots the arrow or whatever. And like the real arc of that movie, I won't spoil it here if you haven't seen Brave, but like is not about that. It is about something completely different that was completely hidden from the marketing. And I think when Pixar does that, it creates this extra sense of like wonder and excitement in these kinds of movies. And so that was like going into Soul having no idea to expect that. Like I even from what I'd seen in trailers, it was like I had like a vague understanding that there was going to be like this relationship between Joe and 22, but I was not expecting it to be the like them going back down to earth and having like the body swap thing that you have in this. And that admittedly, like, and this is where we can't speak to this personal experience, but I do want to highlight some of the criticism that I've seen about this movie is that you have a black man who isn't allowed to be a black man for a lot of the movie because he's in the body of a cat, and you have a white woman being the black man. That is absolutely like a valid criticism. I think it's something that the movie at least tried to be like aware of to an extent, in that they kind of make a point of pointing out that 22 isn't a woman. Like she has the voice of a middle-aged woman because she's being played by Tina Fey, but then she goes on a run of like these other voices that she could have or that they could have, and she only picks that one because it's annoying and it's a little self-meta dig at Tina Fey or whatever. but I have seen that criticism on the movie, thrown out there. So I don't want to sweep that under the rug, or I don't want to not include that criticism in here, especially as a pair of white guys talking about this movie. I think
Yeah.
that is a valid criticism, and it is a criticism that I hope is being heard. But at least from my perspective, um, it it I don't think it was like I don't think there was any malicious intent behind that or anything like that. Obviously, it's Pixar. I don't think they're ever like intending to be kind of like malicious like that. But it's something that I think they were trying to be sensitive to and aware of, while still telling the story that they wanted to tell. Like having like Joe is still there for that whole journey, and him being in the body of a cat instead of his own body even gives him extra perspective, I would say. In like it's he sees things through a different lens that he wouldn't have seen if he had just been himself the entire movie, because he is seeing how other people react to him when when he's not making it all about him. Especially the scene at the barbershop, I think, really hammers that home of like Dez basically saying like, you never ask, we never talk about, like stuff beyond jazz, but I'm really glad you asked me, about, my life today
Hmm.
and stuff like that. Like that's like, I think that's a moment for Joe to realize like, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't make everything in my life about jazz, or make everything in like the people around me's lives about jazz. Like I should be more open to hearing their experiences and stuff. And I don't know how you necessarily get that perspective for him without doing what they did in this movie. But it is a criticism that I wanted to at least kind of include in here, in terms of like the broader picture. But yeah, I like one of the ideas I've loosely had for this show for that D plus would be maybe dedicating a few months and just doing like, hey, we're gonna just go through every Pixar movie and kind of do our own little like version of Pixar in review. Which then I get annoyed when Kind of Funny basically announces that as a stretch goal this year, for their Kind of Funny day. But that's like an idea that I've been flirting with in the back of my head, is like we've already done Wall-E and Onward, as kind of like dedicated episodes, but I think in the broader kind of hierarchy of Pixar movies, like I'm always curious about kind of like where these fall. And this is certainly like I haven't thought about a Pixar movie like the way I've thought about Soul in the aftermath since Inside Out came out. And I'd have to go back and rewatch Inside Out to like figure out which of these two I like better. But like both of them are top tier in my mind because because they are tackling things that aren't typically tackled in movies, let alone family or kids movies. As you kind of touched on earlier, like the fact that this is touching on such big ideas, but trying to make them, as accessible as they can by, just doing something as simple as The Great Beyond and The Great Before. Um, the little jokes that they have of like, sending way too many kids through sending way too many souls through the aloof, center or whatever, like little meta jokes like that we can see in the world around us, I guess. Like I really appreciated this movie being something other than what I was expecting. And I thought that was really cool. And the music behind it, obviously plays a big role in that. Like I've loved, I've long since been a fan of Colbert. And I love that, like, I can go back to remembering John Baptiste guesting on the Colbert Report, and that being where, like, that friendship that has turned into this beautiful thing across their shows has blossomed into. And so I've loved John Baptiste and his music since then, since I got introduced to him on the Colbert Report. And so him, playing such a critical role in the music of this, I thought was also really great and really cool. So that's like another element of this movie that I love, as somebody who I certainly don't, I don't go out of my way probably to listen to jazz, but I don't go out of my way to listen to really any music. I've never been a music guy, in the way that I'm a theater guy or movies and TV and that kind of stuff. but when I do listen to music and jazz, like it certainly stirs something in me still, because of my own like history playing music and all that stuff. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Any favorite moments and favorite scenes that you want to kind of give a shout out to or give some love to, Cam?
Uh, anything with like, it's sad actually because at the very end they show off like how terrible the mentors actually were to 22.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I actually really enjoyed like 22's mentors and how they were like how they went through everything
I
and
think it was a mutual. They
with
both
20,
they both sucked to each other. Like 22 was a jerk
yeah.
to the mentors, and the mentors were jerks
Oh,
in
100%.
kind. Yeah.
100%. Gosh, like when 22 was in Joe's body in the barbershop was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
When he was like, 22 was just waxing soliloquy about like, you know, like the nature of self and soul and like this deep philosophical stuff that was just like the actual truth about 22.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounded like Joe had like entered like a mental and spiritual rebirth or something
Mm-hmm. And yeah,
for
and
the
everybody kind of
crowd
just
there.
being like, "Yeah, I feel that." Like I hear that.
Yeah.
Another little bit of trivia to throw out there for that, or in regards to that scene in particular. One of the characters in the background of the barbershop is modeled off after Colin Kaepernick. Um,
I noticed that. Yeah, I noticed that. I'm like, that guy looks like Colin Kaepernick.
yeah, I don't know if it was like in response to kind of his iconography as part of the Black Lives Matter and obviously kneeling in the NFL and all that stuff. But it's certainly like it is a deliberate, like it's clearly
Yeah,
using him
and
as the
this
reference.
is how I knew because when I first saw Colin Kaepernick when he first like took the knee, my first thought was this guy looks like that rapper Lil Dicky.
Okay.
And then I realized not entirely. Like they have enough common features where I'm like I can see it. And when I watched this, I looked at the movie, watching the movie, and I looked at the guy and I was like, huh, that model looks quite a lot like Lil Dicky. It's just different in some places. Like, oh, like that's Colin Kaepernick. Okay.
Hmm.
So I was wondering, like, did Colin Kaepernick do a cameo in the movie? But no, it's just like the model just looks like him.
Yep. Yep. Um, yeah, I love that barbershop scene. I think, and that I think is one of like
Can you
the
name a barbershop scene in a film that isn't phenomenal?
I,
Let's just be
I mean,
real.
that's fair. I admittedly, just because of the movies I've watched, I've not experienced too many of those kinds of barbershop scenes. Because I've never watched like Friday or Barbershop or those films of that ilk. But like it's the idea behind it of like because it's I'm definitely one of those people when I go get my hair cut, and admittedly, like it's as my long hair has shown is probably not as often as a lot of other people, but I never really like engaging. I just kind of like want to sit there, get my hair cut, and bounce. Like it's just a personal thing for me, but that seeing that cultural shift or what the barbershop experience is. I am familiar with from pop culture enough that I can appreciate the touchstones that it has in this film, and yeah, the way that it is a turning point for Joe, in that like if Joe had gone in there, it would have been a completely different. He would have probably been self-absorbed, talking about like I've got this really really great opportunity with Dorothea. I need to look my best, and it would have been all about Joe. And the fact that 22 kind of puts it out there and talks about other people, asks about Dez and posits like, oh, I thought you were made to be a barber, and Dez is like, no, I'd be like I'm good at it, but this isn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a veterinarian. Like getting to see kind of those extra little like that perspective shift for Joe, I think is really what makes that sequence for me. But also, yeah, just like it's Dez has this great outlook on life, in the same way that I think we even kind of stumbled upon in within this podcast of like, yeah, we can definitely see ourselves in the very mundane things of the Hall of Joe, but like we also think about these great moments we've had and these great, personal connections and stuff.
Yeah.
Like another obvious, candidate for what would be in my, Hall of Trevor would be, kind of funny events or PAXs and stuff. Like just
Oh, for
like
sure.
like the Was it 20? Would have been 2017, I think. PAX East dinner with the IP crew and Greg Miller and stuff like that. Like that would easily be, in there. Like like our Portillo's lunches even would be in there. Like going to the Royal Rumble with you would be there. Like
Oh yeah, that's definitely
there are so many like wonderful things in that this community has included for me that are immediate highlights that I would think of in relation to kind of like the life that I've led, especially the last 5-6 years now. That like I well, yes, I have those like, well, like I didn't want to be a veterinarian, but whatever other things I wanted to be in my life, like Des, like I didn't want to be a database manager, but I am a database manager, and there are days where I'm like, I'm a really good database manager, a really good data analyst, and that kind of stuff. Like when I've had those successes in my personal career, even if it wasn't the desired personal career that I would have picked given my fill or whatever. Like I can still take joy in that, just like Des does in in his work in the barbershop and stuff like that. And so I think that's like there's just great messages and great themes around the movie that are really kind of all coming to a head there in the barbershop sequence. That make that, I think, a really great standout scene. Yeah. Any other bits, moments?
Sorry, I just realized like you were talking about like your barber experience and stuff. I grew up going to a barber.
Mm-hmm.
Like the barber was right by like where my dad I went to a barber for 12 years until he sold his shop. Like, and even then I go to if I go to a place, normally I have my my little brother's wife cut my hair. But if I go to like a place like a sports clips or whatever, like I'm super personable. I talk to you put me in that chair, we'll talk the entire time. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that experience, man. Sorry, I was just caught off guard by that. You're like, yeah, I like to go in there and just like not talk. I'm like, that is I'm like, in my opinion, that is like one of the most awkward moments in the world. Somebody's like extremely intimate with your head, like their hands are all over the top of your head and like going through your hair. Like that's extraordinarily intimate. Like that's a very like thing to do. Like I have to have a rapport with that person, otherwise they're just a stranger like taking care of my hair. I get it. Like that's weird.
Yeah, I grew up going to Supercuts, and like that was like we went to the Supercuts pavilions, every couple months here in town. And that was my experience. And so yeah, it was like I don't shut it down. If they if they want to talk, I'll talk. But it's the same experience I have like in an Uber. Like I'm not gonna engage with an Uber driver or something like that. And I know like you are very different. Like this is why like you are significantly more extroverted than I am, I would say, because you will kind of like have those conversations with complete strangers where I'm much more content to just be like, I'm gonna not engage in this. I like, but if the other person engages, I'm not gonna like say like don't talk to me or something like that. I'll talk and I'll engage, but it's my preferred method would just be like, this is transactional for me. Let's just get this done and we can go about our days. So that's my like, and like I loved when Uber added that like, like, do you want to be chatty or whatever, like in the app, to kind of give drivers a better sense of what, you were looking for. And admittedly, like I only really ever use Uber when we're going out to SF for an event or something like that. But yeah, those are, that's definitely kind of like my just personal like journey with that. And it's largely, I'm sure, driven from just like Supercuts, and I feel like I never had like the same person cutting my hair twice. Like I never had like a regular like person dealing with my hair.
Yeah, no, for me, like I'm only talkative when I have to sit in the front seat, because then it's like you're not like, if it's one thing if you're in an Uber in the back seat, because then it's like easy, just like
just be on your phone.
Talk.
Yeah,
just be on your phone. But if you're sitting next to the guy,
I mean,
it's so awkward not having to talk to it. Like it's like, once again, we're talking about like proximity of person, and like I'm using the term intimacy, but I really just mean like proximity and like being close to a person physically. Like if you get close enough to me, like I feel like I need to talk to you. Otherwise, I feel too awkward.
Mm-hmm.
So it's much more anxiety driven than extroversion. But even then, except if I'm on public transportation,
Mm-hmm.
like if I'm on public transportation, I am like just a statue. Just like do not talk to me.
Yeah. Fair. Any
Anyway,
other favorite moments or bits that you want to highlight from the movie?
the Jerrys are great. Terry sucks.
I
Terry sucks just because Terry sucks because realistically like Terry's just a douchebag.
yeah, I mean Terry is like the antagonist of the film. I love the relationship between the Jerrys and Terry though. It like even going to like yeah, like the Jerrys being like, and we want to award Terry this trophy that Terry insisted we award them. Or like one of my favorite bits of the movie is probably like when they're giving Joe a second chance at life, and it's basically like, well, what about Terry? And they're like, oh, we're handling that, and it cuts away, and it's just one of the Jerrys being like, hey Terry, look over there right now at this very moment, and it's just like the lamest possible way of getting around the Terry factor on that. I love just how simple that dumb beat is. But yeah, like I love that relationship. I love Terry because of that whole dynamic that they all have. Yeah, shout out to the Jerrys and Terry. Um, I also love Moonwind. In particular, I love the reveal of Moonwind as a sign spinner, and that's where he's in the zone. Like I thought that was just a great, fun little bit. I also like that, and I bet I have no doubt you picked up on it that like he used to almost be one of the forgotten souls or whatever it is, because of Tetris.
Yeah,
I lo-
that when he said that he goes Tetris, and like just no explanation given. I'm like, yeah, that all
Yep.
right, yeah,
Yep.
fair,
No,
fair enough.
I like Tetris effect is real. I like I long before the game, I definitely experienced it, so I can appreciate his struggles there. But yeah, like I just love like the introduction of Moonwind and his kind of like crew, and one of them is like a shaman or whatever, one of them is a yoga person or whatever doing stuff in Berkeley or whatever, and they're just like, oh, what about you? And he's like, something like that, and it just cuts to him just spinning his sign, going crazy, and all that stuff. I thought that was just a great like reveal for that character, because I definitely just think about those people when I'm like when I would walk by them, on my way to and from lunch or something like that. I'd just be like, shout out to them, especially here in Arizona in the middle of the summer or something like that, doing the sign spinning garbage for a, an H&R Block or something like that. um,
The H&R Block is a famous one for sure.
yeah. Yeah, especially because they have to wear like the Lady Liberty outfits or whatever around tax time.
Hmm.
But yeah, so Moonwind is another standout for me. Um, what did you think? Are you a Knicks fan? I don't know where you fall on the. No,
No,
you're a Nets
I'm a
fan,
Nets
right?
fan.
So
I'm a Nets
that's
fan,
just
so that was
yeah, that's an
hilarious.
extra little dig for you. And it's one of those things like I remember like Patrick Ewing is the only Knicks player I could like tell you, um, admittedly, because that's who was playing when I was growing up, and he was a great player. But yeah, he was on the Knicks, and like I remember when I was growing up, like there had been this storied rivalry between the Knicks and the Celtics. I didn't realize until like digging in a little bit into that joke, just like how long the Knicks have been like such a long sufferingly bad team or whatever. Like I didn't realize that it really went all the way back to like the 70s, that they've not
Oh
really
yeah, no,
had
like
like they've not had a
the
championship
promise of the
run since then.
yeah. Yeah, no, the promise of like a better Knicks team is one of the great fallacies of New York sports
Hmm.
fans.
I definitely
That growing up in Phoenix, I was a Suns fan,
yeah,
so it didn't really
like
matter. But
we had our
after
own.
I after I left, like I just got tired of the Suns organization, and the Nets moved back to like they moved to Brooklyn, and I was like, now's a good time. New era for the franchise, new era for me as a basketball fan,
Hmm.
and like like it's been some tough times, but Brooklyn is without a doubt like the New York team now.
Mm.
And the Knicks can suck it. I'm sorry, Mario Rivera. Or not Rivera. Sorry,
Mario
Mario.
Piquadio.
Mario Not Bros.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
definitely the one I thought about, and I tweeted at him.
yeah. I saw that. I saw that, and I was like, ah, ha, 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 ha. I wish I was watching this movie with Mario right
Yeah,
now. I'd laugh at him.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, Mario Not Bros. Love that boy, but he has a terrible taste in New York sports teams, and I say that because he's like favors the New York sports teams that I don't like.
Of course.
Like he's a Yankees. Like he's your basic New York sports
Yeah.
fan. I'm your basic New York sports fan who doesn't live in New York.
I mean, he doesn't either.
My
But
mom's yeah, I know, but my mom's from Long Island, so like all like the Long Island sports teams are my favorite.
yeah.
So
Um, in somewhere around that same run, I did love, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, of like the relationships between 22 and the mentors. I loved the bit with Abraham Lincoln, where she
mhm.
really gets under his goat for Andrew Jackson being on the 20 compared to Lincoln being on the
Yeah.
penny. And it's like, well, Lincoln's also on the $5 bill, but yeah, yes, absolutely. It's absurd that
When
Jackson's
he
on
already
the
he's
20.
like they put Jackson
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
20.
yeah. And he like gets mad and throws his hat down or whatever. And yeah, I like Freud and Mother Teresa like are like they were great. Just like it was Freud, right? Carl Jung, I guess. No,
I think
yeah,
Freud,
it was.
Carl
Yeah,
Jung.
I'm
Yeah.
the reason I'm thinking Freud is epic rap battles a couple seasons ago did Sigmund Freud versus Mother Teresa as one of their battles, and so that's why it's in my head. But like, so Mother Teresa is a great little bit, and then yeah, Carl, like she had Carl Jung as a person, um, yeah. So I love each of those little like glimpses into 22's obviously long history, if they are the 22nd soul that came into existence and they're up in the like trillions or whatever.
They
um
were like up in like the hundred of billions or whatever. Yeah.
yeah. um yeah. I'm trying to think other things, if there are any other things. I mean, like I really, like I said, I really thought they were going to head down the path of like Joe having to pick between the gig or being a teacher, and realize, and like I was expecting them to like him have this epiphany of like, well, actually, yeah, teaching is what I really love. I really love breaking through to those kids. So I really love like the moments that we see, Connie kind of get to break out of her shell and really clearly love this thing that that he has exposed her to, and even kind of like when Curly calls and leaves a message of like, you're the only reason I got through school was I loved your
Yeah.
class, and that like I, as somebody who had those teachers, like I love those moments in this movie. Like, and I, in a similar vein, like I got to tell those, like in particular Miss Tutnick, in high school. She was our choir teacher at Saguaro, and like a ton of us I know basically like look at Miss Tutnick as kind of like a very iconic figure in our high school time. Those of us that went to Saguaro, because of just the long tenure that she's had there at that school, but just the amount of lives she touched as the choir teacher there. Like she very much had those kinds of like Joe Gardner vibes for me, in particular. And I've gotten to see her both, in the year since I graduated, just at random events and stuff, talking to her. But then also obviously on Facebook and stuff, I can still kind of like ping her every now and then, or I'll see, the Saguaro High School group of 2003 or whatever is like popping off or something, and kind of giving her some love. So like I love those moments in this movie, is those moments of like getting to celebrate the way he actually inspired people, even if he didn't see how he inspired people because he's so focused on wanting the gig, wanting his big break and all that stuff. But like the fact that he did have an impact, is something that I think, is easy to forget, or it's easy to overlook, as he clearly does. But I love that it gets those little moments to shine, even if they're kind of like subtler. Anything else from you?
No, I think that's it for me.
Yeah. All right. Then let's go. Let's hop over to any. I guess are there any moments that you didn't like in the movie? Any of
No,
those
I
least
think
favorite
I think
moments?
overall, I really don't think there was anything in the film that I like disliked at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't think of a single thing that wasn't at the very least like quite enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. I think I would agree with that. I think it's. I mean, like Pixar just is great at making these kinds of movies. There's still like a level of Pixar magic to them that I think really shines through in a way that like I can envision like maybe the DreamWorks version of this or something, and it just wouldn't have quite the heart to it that I think this one does. So yeah, really solid movie. In terms of grading it, report card A plus to F. What do you want to throw here on Soul, Cam?
I think it's a solid A.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I can get behind that too. A. Like it's not the top tier of Pixar probably, but it's Pixar, and I think really,
Pixar's really
yeah,
good.
like only if you get into like maybe the Cars or the Good Dinosaur do you ever really get outside of even like the B range of Pixar. So yeah, solid A there. A little bit of extra credit, other suggestions if you like this one. As I mentioned at the top, Burrow would be the kind of tie-in animated short to go along with the film that was released, and you can watch that on Disney Plus. You also have, of course, basically everything else is Pixar related. So you have movies like Onward, Up, Inside Out, Toy Story 4, Monsters Inc., Brave, Wall-E, and The Incredibles 2. Extracurriculars. You watching anything else on Disney Plus, Cam? Did you ever catch up and finish Mandalorian season 2?
I did,
Yeah,
yeah. I finished it.
yeah. I look forward
It's
to
very, very good.
we'll sit down and do an episode on that at some point, I'm sure. Anything else you watching on Disney Plus?
Not really, not right now.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think right now if I watch anything else on Disney Plus, and I don't think anything else is popping to mind right now. I've been or at least last few days, I've been just slowly sitting down rewatching Firefly on Hulu, just because I had the itch to go back and watch that show, and I always forget that a very very young Zac Efron is in one of those episodes is in one of those episodes as young Simon, like pre High School Musical Zac Efron. Like he pops up and I'm like, oh, that's right, every time. So shout out to Firefly. But yeah, that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Cam, for hopping on and talking about Soul with me here. You follow Cam at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to, give some love to, Cam?
You know, uh, yeah, I think that the thing I want to kind of point out is keep your eyes peeled for our Game of the Year stuff coming up soon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're pretty excited to have a good time with it, so hopefully you'll enjoy it. We did wait a little bit longer than last year, but I think that'll be worth it. So
Yeah, it was. I mean, 2020 was a lot, and we it was hard to get like motivated to kind of put the plans in place for everything. But yeah, yeah, you can follow me at Trevor J Starkey, and I will echo that. Um, our tentative plans. So this episode's going to go live on Friday. Saturday, we're tentatively looking at doing a live stream of that Nerdy Site show around noon Pacific to kind of do our Game of the Year episode. It's going to be me, Cam, Frank, and Logan talking through all episodes. Again, that's tentative. I'm pretty sure we're going to still try and stick to like stream it live. If you can't catch it live, it will be the episode for that Nerdy Site show next week, and it is going to be probably a very long, epic episode of us going through honorable mentions and then our kind of like turn by turn top tens of 2020, and then and kind of coinciding with all of that, kind of our written top 10 lists and stuff like that will start popping up on the site next week. So you keep an eye out to that Nerdy Site for all that fun stuff. and keep an eye out on the That Nerdy Site Twitter at That Nerdy Site. If you liked what you heard, once again, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. And if you do feel so inclined, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Oh, I should have mentioned earlier, twitch.tv/thatnerdysite. If you're going to try and tune into us live streaming, that'll also be, we'll be tweeting that out when we're ready to go live and all that stuff as well. So yeah, thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.